I did say there might be some more terrarium footage this week. And here we are. I've got a macro lens. And we're taking a little close-up look at these blooms on this orchid. So I did reach out to the person who sold me this orchid. And she told me that this was what happened, was that something happened while these were in development as buds. And they just didn't come to full bloom. It's really interesting though, because you can still see the parts of the orchid. And I'll see if I can pop my finger in there and point out various bits to you. Wow, so these are really tiny, as you can see. I think if they had come to full bloom, the blooms would be more the size of my thumbnail. So on the one at the top, you can see that it does have two separated sepals in at the bottom and a fairly big lip coming in and splitting out there. But then whatever's happened with the development, here the column is kind of fully developed looking there. And you can see that if the lip had unfolded, there's some really beautiful coloration in there. But also these other larger, like these should have been petals, not sepals. This piece here and this piece over here, these should have been petals, and so they look like they were stunted in growth. And then this sepal at the top is just very stunted, very small. But that is the normal sort of development that you'd expect for an oncidium. And the reason why this one was looking to me more like maybe I had some sort of slipper orchid was because the sepals on the bottom didn't seem to have split. So we've just got this one large sepal. And so that looked more like the slipper with one sepal, and then the way the column's sitting in it made it almost look like what I was looking at was that the lip had actually formed a little slipper. But now I can see that what we got here is that the sepals are just underdeveloped. So you can make out a little bit of what's going in there. Or also possible that for some reason this one is just sitting upside down entirely. So this is actually normal development, and then these down here, yeah, I think that's more likely. These down here are the two lower, what would normally be the lower sepals, and then this here, this beauty, this little bit here is the lip. So actually that makes a bit more sense to me. So obviously I'm a little obsessed with the whole situation, even though these didn't develop properly. I'm really excited to see what happens with the next spike that I get. And hopefully that one will grow in properly. A lot of reasons why it might not have come in properly. And some of them are environmental, and I just don't know what I could have done that might have affected it. It could have even been because I sprayed it down with, I sprayed the whole terrarium down a little bit with some soapy alcoholic water. I don't think that would have affected it, but it might have. We just had too many fungus gnats, which is why I put the little bag of nematodes in now. But while we're here, look at how green these roots are and how big and healthy. Now, big and healthy is obviously a relative statement, but considering that they look pretty full and green, this one there, the tip of it seems to have been damaged. But I think overall, this is just a lovely mass of roots for this. As it's growing in this soil setting, and I'm going to take the macro lens off and pull back. So that actually looks really good and healthy for the size of the plant. But while we're playing with the macro lens, let's take a look at the hypoestes or polkadot plant. It's really kind of neat to see that beautiful patterning up close. At least I think it's neat. And we've got the red variety behind that pink. It's neat to see how the splashes of colour develop. I can see why they call it the polka dot plant. This would make a lovely surface textile print. Just those irregular splashes on green. And then of course the glorious fittonia. You can actually see how fuzzy the fittonia is. When I first put it in, I was worried I had overwatered and there was some mold or something happening because the stems are quite fuzzy too. And I thought that fuzziness might be something growing on it, but no, that's just how it is. And you can see that there are different amounts of coloration in the veins, and the veins are sort of different sizes in terms of how much coloration appears on the leaf. And here's a peek in at the very, very tiny new growth on that maidenhair fern. So this is the size of the regular maidenhair fern growth I've got. Some of that's getting a bit dry at the tips, which is honestly just maidenhair for you. And then we come across here, and this is so tiny. But it seems to be growing quite happily, so we'll take tiny as long as we've got growth. And to finish up, a little close in on the cushion moss, which is such a velvety little texture. But when you look at it this close, it looks quite spiky. It's very neat to look at. Moss is such an interesting plant. There's some other moss growing in here too. I'm not sure I'd say that this is all fully established yet. And it's really interesting to see the development of everything. You can see that this is sort of shedding a bit. And I'm not sure if that's because it's unhappy or if that's just a natural part of the growth pattern of this moss. But either way, it's really interesting to see everything going along. Whatever's going on with these little spore clusters or something. I know moss doesn't have seeds per se. It's really neat, and you know, as I've said before, I've only had this set up for a couple of months, maybe 2 or 3 months, so it's still very much a work in progress to understand what's happening with it, but it's always something interesting to look at in there. So I hope you enjoyed taking a little macro look inside the terrarium, and let me know what you think, and have a lovely day.